My name is Lieutenant Colonel Alexandra Rodriguez, and 3 years ago my brother Marcus laughed so hard he nearly choked when I told him I was joining the army. We were in our childhood kitchen in San Antonio, the same place where he'd spent 18 years telling me I wasn't strong enough, fast enough, or tough enough for anything that mattered. The army? Marcus said, wiping tears from his eyes. Alex, you cried when you broke a nail last week. You think you can handle basic training? You think you can be a soldier? At 28, Marcus was everything our military family expected, 6 feet tall, built like a linebacker, with the natural athleticism that had earned him a football scholarship and our father's approval. I was the 22-year-old little sister who had always been too small, too sensitive, too feminine to measure up to Rodriguez family standards. Our father, retired Army Sergeant Major Carlos Rodriguez, had spent 30 years in combat zones and believed strength was measured in pounds lifted and miles run. Mija, he said with that patronizing tone, the military is not for little girls who want to play soldier. Focus on something more appropriate. The appropriate careers they envisioned involved teaching or nursing, anything that didn't require the toughness they were convinced I lacked. They couldn't understand why someone who was 5'4" and 120 pounds would want to pursue a career where physical strength seemed prerequisite for survival, but they didn't know about the fire burning inside me since childhood, the need to prove their assumptions wrong, that size didn't determine strength, and that the little sister they dismissed was capable of more than they imagined. My breaking point came at Marcus's wedding when I overheard him telling his groomsmen, Alex is sweet, but she's never going to amount to much. She's too soft for the real world. Dad and I will probably end up taking care of her forever. That casual cruelty crystallized my determination. I spent 6 months preparing, working with trainers, studying military tactics, learning survival skills, before announcing my decision to enlist as an infantry officer. The family's reaction was predictable. Alex, be realistic, my mother said. The military is for people like your father and Marcus. You are delicate. Marcus was worst of all. You know what's going to happen? You'll quit in the first week. Basic training will break you, and you'll come running home crying. But their mockery became fuel for my determination. Every dismissive comment strengthened my resolve to prove them wrong. I enlisted the next day. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Walsh, my recruiter, was the first person in months to see potential rather than limitations. Officer candidate school is tough, she warned. Ranger school is tougher. Are you ready? I'm ready, I replied, meaning it completely. The night before leaving for Fort Benning, Marcus pulled me aside. Look, Alex, there's no shame in admitting this isn't for you. Don't put yourself through something that's just going to end in failure. Marcus, I said, my voice steady, when I graduate from officer candidate school, when I complete ranger training, when I'm leading soldiers in combat. Remember this conversation. Remember that you told me I couldn't do it. He laughed dismissively. If you make it through basic training, I'll eat my hat. As I drove toward Fort Benning the next morning, I carried the weight of their expectations, or rather, their complete lack of expectations. They were convinced I would fail. But I also carried determination born of years of being underestimated, fury channeled into preparation, and a vision of who I could become if I refused their limitations. Officer candidate school would test everything I thought I knew about myself, push me beyond every boundary I'd accepted, and teach me that leadership wasn't about physical size, it was about courage, competence, and making difficult decisions under pressure. The mockery would end when I returned wearing lieutenant's bars. But that was just the beginning. The real test would come, proving to elite soldiers that their young female commander deserved their respect, trust, and ultimately, their salute. Officer candidate school at Fort Benning was designed to break people. From the moment I stepped off the bus at 0300 hours, surrounded by drill sergeants who seemed to take personal pleasure in making our lives miserable, I understood that everything I thought I knew about my limitations would be tested. Rodriguez, screamed Drill Sergeant Thompson. You look like you should be serving coffee, not leading soldiers. Drop and give me 50. The next 12 weeks became a blur of pre-dawn runs, obstacle courses, weapons training, and leadership exercises. Every day brought challenges that pushed me beyond what I'd thought possible. While I wasn't the strongest candidate, I could keep up physically. What surprised me was discovering that many larger, more athletic candidates struggled with mental challenges, map reading, tactical problems, leadership scenarios requiring quick thinking under pressure. During our 4th week, conducting night navigation in Georgia woods, I found myself helping struggling classmates with land navigation, explaining compass triangulation and magnetic declination. Drill Sergeant Martinez noticed my assistance. "Rodriguez," he said quietly, "you've got good instincts. Keep helping your classmates, but don't let them become dependent. A real leader teaches people to succeed independently." That feedback became my turning point. Leadership wasn't about being biggest or loudest, it was understanding complex problems, making sound decisions under pressure, and inspiring others beyond their perceived limitations. Over following weeks, I emerged as an informal leader. During combat exercises, I was chosen to lead squads through tactical problems. In academics, candidates sought my help with military history and leadership principles. Most importantly, I developed confidence that comes from succeeding at seemingly impossible challenges. The turning point came during our final field exercise, a week-long combat simulation where I led 43 candidates through establishing and defending a hilltop position against simulated enemy attacks. Moving through darkness using hand signals and whispered commands, I felt the weight of real responsibility. When we encountered an unexpected deep creek, some wanted to detour, but I realized that would compromise our timeline. "We're crossing here," I whispered. "Set up safety lines, but move quickly and quietly." During the subsequent 6-hour defensive battle, I coordinated our defense, directed fire, repositioned squads as situations changed, and made split-second decisions that separate effective leaders from those who fold under pressure. When it ended, our platoon had successfully defended against multiple attacks with no simulated casualties. Captain Williams conducted the after-action review. "Candidate Rodriguez, your performance demonstrated exactly the leadership we expect from Army officers. You planned thoroughly, communicated clearly, and inspired confidence while accomplishing your mission." I graduated 3rd in my class of 127, earning Distinguished Military Graduate and my commission as 2nd Lieutenant. When my family attended the ceremony, I caught Marcus's eye as I crossed the stage. For the first time, I saw something that might have been respect. After the ceremony, my father stepped forward in his old dress uniform. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," he said formally, "I request permission to render your first salute." As the man who'd doubted my toughness saluted me, I felt overwhelming vindication, but officer candidate school was just the beginning. My goal was Infantry Officer, requiring Infantry Basic Officer Leader Course and Ranger School, programs testing leadership in high-stress combat environments where mistakes cost lives. Infantry training was 17 weeks of intensive tactical instruction. Captain Rodriguez, my instructor and Afghanistan veteran, was direct about his concerns. "You'll have to prove yourself every day, not just to me, but to every soldier you'll eventually lead." The training was brutal, live-fire exercises with artillery exploding around us, night attacks across broken terrain, tactical decisions while exhausted and under simulated fire. During one challenging exercise leading a platoon attack, our communications were cut and my squad leader became a casualty. With half my force pinned down, I had to adapt in real time. I moved forward under fire, repositioned squads for better angles, and coordinated the assault using hand signals. The attack succeeded. Staff Sergeant Williams, a seasoned NCO initially skeptical about women in combat, pulled me aside afterward. "Lieutenant, that was solid leadership. You kept your head, adapted to the situation, and led from the front. That's what infantry soldiers need." I graduated top 10% and earned the right to attend Ranger School, the ultimate leadership test qualifying me for the Army's most elite units. Ranger School was 61 days, designed to push students beyond physical and mental limits. Over 50% attrition rate. I was one of 3 women in a class of 150, understanding we'd be scrutinized more closely and any failure seen as evidence women couldn't meet standards. Surviving on 1 meal daily while conducting 18-hour patrols, I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. The mental challenges were greater, making sound tactical decisions while exhausted, hungry, and operating on 2 hours sleep requires mental discipline few people develop. During the 4th week, assigned as patrol leader for a night raid, I moved 8 students across 3 miles of swampland to execute a coordinated attack while avoiding instructor evaluators, playing enemy sentries. We infiltrated undetected, gathered required intelligence, and exfiltrated successfully. Outstanding leadership, Ranger Rodriguez, said the senior instructor after our after-action review. You demonstrated exactly the competence we expect from Ranger qualified officers. Graduating. Ranger School earned me the tab signifying completion of the Army's premier leadership course. More importantly, I'd proven that physical size and gender were irrelevant compared to competence, determination, and leadership ability. When I called Marcus after graduation, his voice carried genuine respect. Alex, I have to admit I was wrong. Ranger School? That's incredible. The mockery was over. But the real test lay ahead, leading soldiers in combat, where theories would be tested in the most dangerous circumstances, and my ability to earn respect would be measured where it mattered most. 2 years later, I stood before 43 of the finest soldiers the Army had ever produced, knowing their lives would depend on leadership skills I'd fought to develop. At 26, a captain with 2 combat deployments, I'd been assigned command of Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, one of the world's most elite light infantry units. The briefing room at Hunter Army Airfield was packed with Rangers whose combat experience dwarfed mine. Staff Sergeant Martinez had conducted raids for 8 years. Sergeant First Class Thompson had been with the regiment 12 years across 3 continents. These men had earned positions through demonstrated competence in the most dangerous situations. Now being asked to follow a relatively young female officer whose qualifications, while impressive, were untested in special operations. Rangers, I addressed my new command. I know some of you wonder what you've gotten into. You see a commander younger than some of you, who hasn't been with the regiment as long, who represents something new. I made eye contact with each squad leader. I won't pretend my gender doesn't matter, or that leading Rangers isn't my greatest challenge. What I will say is that I earned my place here the same way you did, through performance, competence, and absolute commitment to the Ranger standard. Response was polite but reserved. These professionals would follow orders regardless of personal opinions, but respect, the kind making soldiers willing to follow you into life-threatening situations, had to be earned through demonstrated leadership. Under pressure to my first test came 3 weeks later. Alpha Company was tasked with a high-priority direct action mission in Afghanistan, capturing a Taliban commander coordinating attacks against coalition forces, located at a mountain compound. For a limited window, the mission briefing at Bagram Airfield involved multiple intelligence agencies. As I absorbed details about the target, compound, and expected enemy forces, I realized this would be the most complex operation I'd ever led, a night raid against heavily defended positions in mountainous terrain with multiple variables that could go catastrophically wrong. After 18 hours developing plans minimizing risk while maximizing success chances, we launched at 0200 hours aboard modified MH-60 Black Hawks. Approaching the target, I saw the compound below, buildings surrounded by high walls and defensive positions, making this extremely challenging. 2 minutes out, the pilot announced. Looking at my Rangers, volunteers knowing the risks, I felt command's weight in ways no training could simulate. Rangers, remember your training, trust your teammates, follow the plan. We go fast, accomplish the mission, and all come home. The assault began at 0247 with coordinated attacks on multiple entry points. First squad breached the main gate while second squad helicopter assaulted the roof. Third squad established security preventing enemy reinforcements from my command position. I coordinated while monitoring radio traffic when everything went wrong. Contact front. Martinez's voice crackled. Taking heavy fire from the main building. Pinned down at the entrance. Simultaneously, Thompson reported enemy fighters reinforcing positions preventing us from reaching our target. We had maybe 10 minutes before enemy reinforcements arrived, and our assault was stalled. This was every commander's nightmare, when plans break down and you make decisions determining whether soldiers come home alive. I had seconds to assess, adapt, and issue orders, meaning the difference between success and catastrophe. Analyzing the tactical situation, I realized reinforcing our stalled assault wouldn't work. The enemy had too much firepower from protected positions. All squads, break contact and withdraw to rally point Alpha. We're repositioning for a different angle. Some commanders would have continued the assault rather than admit the initial plan wasn't working. But I'd learned that effective leadership sometimes requires unpopular decisions based on changing circumstances rather than stubborn adherence to failing plans. We withdrew 200 meters and quickly developed an alternative approach, attacking a secondary building, allowing us to approach our target from an unexpected direction. The revised assault achieved complete surprise. We secured the target building without opposition, captured our high-value target with valuable intelligence, and completed the operation in 18 minutes with no friendly casualties. During our security halt, Martinez approached quietly. "Ma'am, that was outstanding tactical thinking. Many commanders would have kept throwing people at the main building until someone got hurt. You had courage to change plans when they weren't working." His assessment meant everything. Martinez was a combat veteran whose opinion carried weight throughout the company, and his public acknowledgement would influence how other Rangers viewed my leadership. The real validation came during our after-action review. Colonel Davidson, our battalion commander, conducted detailed analysis. "Captain Rodriguez, your decision to break contact and reposition was exactly the adaptive leadership we expect. You prioritized mission accomplishment and soldier safety over personal ego." Command Sergeant Major Williams provided the most meaningful assessment. "Rangers, what you witnessed was leadership at its finest. Captain Rodriguez made tough decisions under pressure, adapted to changing circumstances, and brought everyone home safely while accomplishing the mission." Over following months, I led Alpha Company through increasingly complex operations. Each mission provided opportunities to demonstrate competence, build trust, and refine leadership skills tested in training but proven in combat. The transformation in my relationship with the company was gradual but unmistakable. Rangers, initially polite but reserved, began seeking my tactical input. Squad leaders who once questioned orders now executed them with confidence born from leadership trust. The crystallizing moment came during our final operation before redeployment, a village clearance, when we came under well-coordinated ambush. Enemy fighters in multiple buildings created crossfire, preventing advance or withdrawal. 2 Rangers were wounded in initial contact, and we were pinned down with minimal cover. I coordinated response, calling medical evacuation and artillery support while directing squads to suppress enemy positions. I realized this situation defined commanders. Every decision would be scrutinized, but more importantly, my Rangers' lives depended on thinking clearly under maximum stress. For 27 minutes, I directed complex combat operations under direct fire. We systematically cleared enemy positions, evacuated wounded soldiers, and secured the village while preventing enemy escape. When the operation concluded and we prepared to extract, something unprecedented happened. Without orders, my entire company formed up in formation I hadn't requested. Martinez called them to attention, and then, as one, 43 Rangers rendered the kind of perfect salute reserved for commanders who have earned absolute respect. The salute lasted seconds, but its meaning was unmistakable. These elite soldiers, men who'd initially questioned whether a young female officer could lead them in combat, were acknowledging I'd proven myself worthy of their trust, respect, and absolute confidence. That evening, I called Marcus. When he answered, warmth had replaced condescension in his voice. "Alex, how are you doing? We've been following the news and worrying." "Marcus, do you remember what you said when I told you I was joining the army? About coming home crying in 2 weeks?" After a long pause, "Alex, I owe you an apology. I was completely wrong about you. What you've accomplished, leading Rangers in combat. I'm proud of you. We all are." His sincerity was something I'd never heard before. The brother who'd spent years mocking my limitations now expressed genuine pride in my achievements. "Your doubts didn't hurt me, they motivated me," I told him. "Every time someone said I wasn't tough enough, it made me more determined to prove them wrong." "Well, you certainly did that, Commander Rodriguez. It has a nice ring to it." As I prepared for another night in Afghanistan, I reflected on lessons about leadership, respect, and the difference between being given authority and earning it. The Rangers who followed me into combat hadn't been ordered to respect me, they'd chosen to based on my performance under pressure. The mockery had ended years ago, replaced by something far more valuable, the trust of elite soldiers who'd seen me tested in the most dangerous circumstances and found me worthy of their confidence. The little sister dismissed as too delicate was now a combat-proven leader whose Rangers would follow her anywhere. More importantly, I discovered that leadership wasn't about physical size or gender, it was about competence, courage, and willingness to make difficult decisions when lives hung in the balance. The perfect salute my Rangers gave me wasn't just recognition of rank, it was acknowledgement that I'd earned my place among the Army's elite through demonstrated leadership under fire. And that was worth more than any family approval I'd ever sought. The END warning. Legal disclaimer: this story is entirely fictional and has been created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real persons, places, or events is purely coincidental.